Dear students, I welcome you to this video lecture. So in this lecture we will be discussing module 4 from C programming for problem solving. So from this module we have already discussed user defined functions. So in this is a continuation of the previous session. So here in this session we will be discussing something called as recursion. So that is the important main topic that is discussed in this session. Along with that we will be discussing some concepts related to functions, that is the type of parameter passing techniques that we have that are also discussed in this session. So first let us see what is recursion. Recursion refers to the process where a function calls itself repeatedly until a certain exit condition is met. So generally we have seen how to call a function. So in the definition of the function, if the function itself is called again, for example, if we have written a function called as Fibonacci to find Fibonacci numbers, so within the Fibonacci function definition, we have a call for the Fibonacci function again. So that means the function Fibonacci is calling Fibonacci again. So this type of functions are called as recursive functions, and the concept is called as recursion. So a function which calls itself repeatedly until a certain exit condition is met is called as a recursive function. So here is the flowchart for the recursive function. So we have a recursive function. So we will check if the exit condition is reached. If it is not reached, then the body of the function is executed, and somewhere in the body of the function again the same function is called. So this process repeats until the condition fails, when the function stops. So basically there are two types of recursion. The first technique is direct recursion and the second one is indirect recursion. So let's see what is direct recursion. So it refers to a process where a function calls itself directly, as illustrated here. So that means I gave you an example of Fibonacci. The Fibonacci function is calling Fibonacci again. So this type of function is called as direct recursion. So a function calls itself directly, it's called as recursive function. So if you see in the figure, so function 1 executes and it calls function 1 inside the definition of the function 1. So it's example for direct recursion. So the next type of recursion that we have is indirect recursion. So it refers to a process where a function calls another function and that function calls back the original function. Something like A calls B, B calls C, and C again calls A. So this is, again, it's a continuous process. So this type of recursion is called as indirect recursion. So the function is not directly calling itself, but function will call another function. So and that function might call this function again. So the process takes place as shown in the figure here. So if you observe this figure, we have function 1 which calls function 2, so the control goes to function 2. So this function 2 calls function 3, so the control again goes to function 3, and we see that function 3 calls function 1. So after 3 cycles, that is after finishing function 1, function 2, function 3, again function 1 will get called. So this type of recursion is called as indirect recursion. But most of the example that we see in this session will be related to direct recursion, where function calls itself directly. So first let us see an example program to find the factorial of a number using recursion method. So we are going to find the factorial of a number. So suppose that we need to find the factorial of 4. We know that 4 factorial is nothing but 4 into 3 into 2 into 1. That is a factorial of a particular number n is nothing but the product of all natural numbers from 1 till n. So 4 factorial is nothing but 4 into 3 into 2 into 1, which is nothing but 24. So let us see how the process works here. So we have 4 factorial. So we are calculating 4 factorial, and we know that 4 factorial is nothing but 4 into 3 into 2 into 1. So now let us consider the last 3 digits, that is 3 into 2 into 1. So 3 into 2 into 1 is nothing but 3 factorial. So 4 factorial can be written as now 4 into 3 factorial. So similarly, again 3 factorial can be written as 4 into 3 into that is 3 factorial can be written as 3 into 2 into 1. So 2 into 1 is nothing but 2 factorial. So which is nothing but 4 into 3 into 2 factorial. Similarly, again we can write 2 factorial can be written as 2 into 1 factorial. So we get 4 into 3 into 2 into 1 factorial, and we know that 1 factorial again we can write it as 1 into 0 factorial as shown here, and we know that 0 factorial is nothing but 1. So when we substitute 1 here, we get 4 into 3 into 2 into 1, which is equal to 24, because we know that 0 factorial is 24. So what we see here is, so if you have to find factorial of 4, you need to know factorial of 3. So if you want factorial of 3, you should know factorial of 2. So if you know factorial of 2, you need to know, you need to know factorial of 1. Or in other words, if you know 2 factorial, then you can find 3 factorial, because 2 factorial into 3 is 3 factorial. Similarly, if you know 3 factorial, you can find 4 factorial. So this is what here happens here is, so when the function calls itself in smaller versions, we try to find the solution for the smallest version of the function, which is used later to find the solution of the complex problem. So that is the approach here. So finally, on executing this, we get the result as 24. So therefore, for this particular program, we can write the recursive relation like this. Factorial of n is 1 if n is equal to 0. We know that when n is equal to 1, n is equal to 0, the factorial is 1. Otherwise, if n is greater than 0, then factorial of n is nothing but n into factorial of n minus 1. For example, factorial of 4 is 4 into factorial of 3. So that is the recursive relation. So now let us see an example here. So let's take again, this is one more repetition. Again, if we take factorial of 5, so it is 5 into factorial of 4, 5 minus 1, 4. So factorial of 4 will be 4 into factorial of 3. Likewise, 3 will be factorial of 3 into, 3 will be, factorial of 3 will be 3 into factorial of 2, and factorial of 2 will be 2 into factorial of 1. And factorial of 1 is 1 into factorial of 0, and we know that factorial of 0 is 1. So ultimately we get the answer as 5 into 4 into 3 into 2 into 1, which is nothing but 120. So this is an example for recursion. So here let us see the program to find the factorial of a number by using recursion. So hash include stdio.h, this is the header file. So then int fact int n, so this is the function declaration. When do we declare a function? When the function is defined after main, we need to declare the function. So what you observe here is the name of the function is fact. It takes an integer as a parameter and returns integer as a written value. So this is the function declaration or the function prototype. So then we have void main. The execution of the program begins here, followed by opening brace, and then we declare the variables. So here we have taken two variables, k and n. So k is the number whose factorial we are going to determine, and the value that is written by the factorial function is stored in a. Here you can take any variable. So don't think that we need to use only n. We can use any variable name. So once we finish the declaration, let us ask the user to enter the value of the number whose factorial has to be determined. So scanf %d ampersand k. So %d because k is declared to be an integer. So next a is equal to fact of k. So we are calling the fact function by passing k as the parameter, and the answer that is returned by the factorial function will be stored in a, and again a has to be integer because in the function declaration we have mentioned that the factorial function will return a integer value. So once the factorial is found out, we can display the result. So the factorial of %d is %d, that is we are displaying the values of k and a. For example, the factorial of 5 is say 120. So that's the end of main function. Now let us see how we should define the factorial function. So int fact int n. So we know that when we define the function, there shouldn't be a semicolon in the function header. So n is the parameter here. So if n is equal to 0, we know the recursive condition, the factorial value is 1 when n is 0, otherwise it is n into factorial of n minus 1. So if n is 0, we will return 1, else we will return n into factorial of n minus 1. So when the compiler sees this line, that is factorial of n minus 1, again this function will be called with n minus 1 value. So students, I hope this is clear. So if you are passing 4 as the value here, then the n is not equal to 0, so else parts get executed. So return 4 into factorial of 4 minus 1, that is factorial of 3. So factorial of 3 will be called, again this will return 3 into factorial of n minus 1, 3 minus 1, 2. Similarly, likewise, so when you reach n as 0, so that is when you call factorial of 0, we get the return value as 1, which will get multiplied to 1 because we have called 1 into fact of 0. So in the reverse order this will continue and you will obtain the final result. So each time the function is called, the answer that is calculated is written to its caller. For example, factorial of 3 will be called by factorial of 4 because factorial of 4 is 4 into factorial of 3. So the final answer from factorial of 3 will be returned to factorial of 4. So that is how the process works. So next let us see one more C program to generate Fibonacci series again by using recursion, and you know that the Fibonacci series starts with 0 and 1 and each term in the Fibonacci series is sum of the previous two terms. So the Fibonacci series, the recursive relation, the recurrence relation for the Fibonacci series can be written as fib of n is equal to 0 if n is equal to 1, 1 if n is equal to 2, because the first term is 0 in the Fibonacci series and the second term is 1. Otherwise, if n is greater than 0 for any other possible value, 1 and 2 we have already written the condition. For any other value, it is Fibonacci of n minus 1 plus Fibonacci of n minus 2. For example, fib of 3 is nothing but fib of 2 plus fib of 1. So fib of 2 is 1, fib of 1 is 0, so 0 plus 1, 1. So that's how it is calculated. So again let us see the program here. Hash include stdio.h. So int fib int n. So this is the function declaration. Functional declaration should end with the semicolon. So again this fib function also takes an integer value called n. N is the parameter whose Fibonacci value will be computed and it is returned. So the return type is integer here. Then we have void main. So then follows the declaration. We have int k I comma x. So k is the number whose Fibonacci series we will be finding, and I is nothing but we are forming a series here. So for each value we need to determine the value. For example, when we have to find fib of 4, we need to know what is fib of 0, what is fib of 1, what is fib of 2, fib of 3. So we need to write a for loop here. So I is used for the for loop, and x is nothing but the value that is returned by the function. So once we know fib of 4, Fib of 0 we will print, fib of 1 we will print, fib of 2 we will print. So each time we get a value returned by the function, we are going to print it. So the return value is stored in the variable x here. So now let us ask the user to enter the value of k. So it has to be k, small correction students here, this has to be k. So scanf %d ampersand k. So because k is integer and in scanf we should use the ampersand. So next let us print the Fibonacci series. So for you have to enter your series should contain k number of values. For example, if the value entered is 4, then the Fibonacci series will be 0, 1, 1 and 2. So let us write a for loop now. For I is equal to 1, I less than or equal to k, I plus plus. So if k value is 4, then the value of I ranges from 1 till 4, that is 1, 2, 3, 4. So the for loop will execute 4 times here. So x is equal to fib of I. So first we will call fib of I here. Fib of I means it goes like this. So it should be first we will call fib of 1, then we will call fib of 2, fib of 3, fib of 4. So each time we call the value, we are going to display the result. So here we have fib of, first we will call fib of 1, then fib of 2, fib of 3, fib of 4. So each time the function returns a value, the value is stored in x and which we will print in the next line. So x is equal to fib of I, printf %d \d x. So that is the end of the for loop and the end of the main function. So I hope this is clear. So we are reading the value of k, then we will write a for loop to find the Fibonacci series, Fibonacci value of each particular position in the series. So now let us define the fib function. So int fib int n. So we have already written the recursive relation, then it's very easy to write the program. We know that when n is 1, that is number of terms is 1, the series will be just 0. When n is equal to 2, that is else if n is equal to 2, the second term in the series is 1, otherwise it is Fibonacci of n minus 1 plus n minus 2, Fibonacci of n minus 2. So else written fib of n minus 1 plus fib of n minus 2. So that is the end of the function here. So I hope this is clear to you. So we have just written the three the relations in the recurrence relation of Fibonacci series. So let's see how what the output will be. So enter the value of n. 4, the series will be 0, 1, 1, 2. So let me just see, when n is equal to 4, the for loop will be for I is equal to 1, I less than or equal to n, I plus plus. So when I is equal to 1, for the first iteration of the for loop, fib of 1 is called. So the result is 0. When n is equal to 1, it returns 0. When n is equal to I is equal to 2, fib of 2 will be called. So fib of 2 is 1. So this value will be written. Later, when I is equal to 3, fib of 3 will be called. So n is not 0 or 1. So sorry, n is not 1 or 2. So fib of 3 will be fib of 2 plus fib of 1. Fib of n minus 1 plus n minus 2. So fib of 2 returns 1 here and fib of 1 returns 0. So 1 plus 0 is calculated. So fib of 3 will be equal to 1 again. So next, when I is equal to 4, fib of 4 will be called and fib of 4 will be fib of 3 plus fib of 2. So fib of 3 will be called, fib of 3 will again call fib of 2 plus fib of 1. So fib of 2 as it is we have written here. So this portion is similar to this one, fib of 2. So then fib of 2 will return 1. Next fib of 1 will be called, fib of 1 will return 0. Then the next again fib of 2 will be called, fib of 2 will return 1. So the answer returned by fib of 2 is 1, fib of 1 is 0, fib of 2 is again 1. So this is added up and the result becomes 2 here. So this is the final result. So the value, output value that is printed here will be fib of I is equal to 1, 0, fib I is equal to 2, 1, I is equal to 3, 1, similarly I is equal to 4, 2. So this is the output what we have seen in the previous slide. So this is the Fibonacci series program, student. So this is very easy to write a program if you know the recursive relation. So next let us write a program to compute the binary coefficient, that is NCR, by using recursion. So we already know what is NCR. NCR is nothing but n factorial by r factorial into n minus r factorial. So that is the formula for NCR. When n is greater than r, it is n factorial by r factorial into n minus r factorial. So this is the second line is again same as the first one, where it has been written in one words. So NCR is factorial of n by factorial of r into factorial of n minus r. So here is the program, students. So hash include stdio.h int fact int of n. See, even though we are finding Fibonacci series, even though we are finding the NCR value, that is binomial coefficient, we need to know the factorial. So basically we will be using factorial function itself here. So let's write the program. So hash include stdio.h int fact int n. So this we have already discussed. Void main int n comma r comma s. So n is the value of n, r is represents value of r, and res is the result. So let us read the value of n and r here. So printf, enter the value of n and r, scanf %d ampersand n ampersand r. So if next condition is when n is greater than r, we know that the result is NCR is n factorial, that is factorial of n. We are calling n factorial can be found out by calling factorial of n. Similarly, factorial of r divided by factorial of r into factorial of n minus r. So once we get the result, let us display the result value. So else part, suppose n is not greater than r, then it's not, we cannot find the factorial. So we cannot find the NCR value, so we will display a error message telling that n should be greater than r. So now we need to define the factorial function. This is same as the previous one. So int n, this is the function definition or the function header here, no semicolon. So if n is equal to 0, we will return 1. Otherwise, we will return n into factorial of n minus 1. So we are calling the recursive call for factorial function to find the factorial. By using the factorial values, we can find the binomial coefficient. So here is the output. So enter the value of n and r. If we enter 4 and 2, then it is 4 factorial by 2 factorial into 4 minus 2 factorial. So it is 4 factorial 25, 2 factorial is 2. So 24 by 2 into 2. So the result is 6. So here is a simple analysis of this program. So if n is greater than r, we know that result is equal to fact of n by fact of r into fact of n minus r. So when n is equal to 4 and r is equal to 2, we have n is greater than r, 4 greater than 2, condition is checked and it is true. So it calls factorial of 4 divided by factorial of 2 into factorial of 2. So first the numerator factorial of 4 will be called. So the control will go to the factorial function definition, n is equal to 4. So it will execute recursively and the answer will be returned will be factorial of 4, that is 24. So once it is done, the control will go to the next function that is in the denominator, factorial of r. So factorial of 2 will be called and we have the direct factorial of 2. So that will again return the value as 2. So by calling again the factorial function recursively. Next, factorial of n minus r, that is 4 minus 2, which is again 2. Again the factorial of function is called with n value as 2. So which executes recursively and returns the answer as 2. So the final answer would be 24 by 2 into 2. So 24 by 4, which is equal to 6. So this is the how the program executes. So the next small topic to understand is actual and formal parameter. So you know already what is a parameter. Parameter is nothing but the data that is passed to the function. So in order for the function to execute, it requires some data. So whatever data you pass, you call them as parameter. So now there are two types of parameters. We have actual parameter and formal parameter. So the parameter inside the function call is called as actual parameter. So when you call the function, you will pass the values. For example, if you have defined a function called add. So when you call the add function, so you may pass add 4, 5, or say you might take two variables, a is equal to 10, b is equal to 20, and you will call the add function as add of a, b. So a, b are present in the function call. So these are actual parameters. But when you define the function, you may define the function as int add, int x, y. So when you write like that, the x value, a value will be copied to x and b value will be copied to y. So x and y are the parameters in the function definition. So these parameters are called as formal parameters. So the parameters in the function call are called as actual parameters. The parameters in the function definition or declaration, these are called as formal parameters. So now let us see the different parameter passing mechanism or types of argument passing. So parameters and arguments both are usually the same. So let us see the different parameter passing techniques here. So we have basically two important types of parameter passing techniques, that is pass by value and pass by reference. So when you say pass by value, a copy of the parameter will be passed. So any changes made to the parameter in the function definition will not affect the original copy. In case of pass by reference, the address of the variable is passed. So any changes you make to the parameter, it is visible in the function call also. So that is pass by value and pass by reference. So let us see them in more detail. So pass by value or call by value. So when a parameter, when a variable or value is passed to the function during function call, it is passed by value. So in this type, values of actual parameters are copied into formal parameters. So that means it's like if you have to give something, for example, if you need to share your notes book with someone, you will not give you the original copy of the notes. So instead you will make a Xerox of it and you will give it to your friend. So if any changes is made in the Xerox copy by your friend, it does not affect your original copy. Your original copy will be as it is. All the changes are visible only in the Xerox copy where your friend has made the changes. So that is, this kind of technique is called as call by value. So what we do is, we are not actually passing the original parameter. Instead, a copy of the parameter will be passed to the function. So let us see an example here. The very simple example that we are taking is to swap two numbers. So the program, let me first explain you the program. So we'll start with hash include stdio.h void swap int m comma n. So m comma n are the formal parameters here. So we know that whenever we have to swap any two values, we need a temporary variable. So first let us define the temporary variable, that is int temp. So then we have temp is equal to m. So here, in order to exchange two variables, as I told you, we need a temporary variable. So first, the first value will be copied to the temporary variable. So once it is saved in temporary variable, second value will be copied to the first variable, and then to the second variable we will copy the value that is stored in the temporary variable. So that is how the exchange takes place here. Temp is equal to m, m is equal to n, then n is equal to temp. So this is how we exchange the two variables. So now let us see the main function here. So void main int a is equal to 10, b is equal to 20. So these are the actual parameters here. So let us print the values of a and b before calling the swap function. So values before exchanging are %d and %d a comma b. So once it is done, we will call the swap function. Let us pass 10 and 20 as the parameter. So when we pass 10 and 20, a copy of 10 and 20 will be a and b will be made in m and n. So m gets the value of a, that is 10, n gets the value of b, that is 20. So once we call the swap function, again let us print the values of a and b and see what has happened to a and b. So let us see what happens here. So first we have two variables a and b with values 10 and 20. So next we will call the swap function here. So swap of a and b will call swap of 10 comma 20. So 10 will be copied to m and 20 will be copied to n. So now we have two variables m and n whose values are 10 and 20, and a temporary variable which has no value because we have simply written int temp. So next we have written temp is equal to m. So what is the value of m is 10. So temp is equal to 10 now. So temp becomes 10. M is equal to n. What is the value of n? 20. So m is equal to 20 now. And then we have n is equal to temp. Temp is 10 now. So n is equal to 10. So what do we see here is, earlier m and n values were 10 and 20, and now it becomes 20 and 10 with the help of temporary variable. That means the value gets swapped up here. So once the function finishes execution, the control will now come back to the main function. So values after exchanging. So if you see the output, values before exchanging are 10 and 20, and value after exchanging are also 10 and 20. This is because whatever values we have passed a and b, nothing has happened to those values. Whatever changes we have done in the function definition, that is in the swap function, that changes are applicable only to the formal parameters, that is only to m and n, but not to the actual parameters a and b. So this is call by value. So when you use call by value technique, any changes that is done to the parameter inside the function definition, it is not visible to the function call. So the next technique that we have is pass by reference. So here we will not pass the copy of the variable, instead we will pass the address. It's something like, as we have taken the example of Xerox notes, so instead of giving your friend a copy of your notes, that is Xerox copy of notes, you will give your notes itself. So when you give your own copy, any changes your friend makes, it is visible to you once you get back the notes, because there is only one copy that is shared by both you and your friend. So pass by reference, when an address of the variable is passed to the function during function call, it is called pass by reference. So when you do pass by reference, any changes done to the formal parameters, then actual parameters also get changed. So changes to the formal parameters in the function definition will change the values of the actual parameters in the function call. So before understanding, we need to understand few topics here. So let's consider that we have a declaration int I is equal to 3. So I is some location, memory location, say some 65,524. So the name or location name is I here, and the value of that location is 3. So next, if I take one more variable, say int j, and if I write j is equal to address of I, then you see that the address of I is 65524. So that value will get stored in j here. I hope this is clear. When we write I is int I is equal to 3, then the situation will be like this. So one variable called I is created whose value is 3 at this particular location address, that is 65,524. Now when you write j is equal to address of I, j should be declared as integer here. J is equal to address of I, then the address of I, that is nothing but 65524, will be stored in j, and j will have some other address. J is one more variable in the memory, so it will have some address, but the value that is stored in j will be the address of I. So ampersand means address of operator. So that is very important. So ampersand is address of operator. When you write ampersand I, it returns address of the variable I. So here ampersand I, that is address of I, is 65524. So that gets stored in j. So next, when you write int star j, suppose you write int, when you declare j, you need to write it as int star j here. Star j means it is address operator. So whenever you declare a variable preceded with the star, for example int j is normal declaration where j can hold any value, but if the same j is declared as int star j, then j can hold the address of another variable, and that is called as a pointer. So when we write int star j, j can hold the address. That's why we write j is equal to ampersand I. So because j is star j means it's a pointer, it can hold address. So if you write ampersand j is equal to ampersand I, then address of I will be stored in j. So star means the value at address operator. It gives the value stored at particular address, also called as the indirection operator. Let's see how it gives the value later. J is used to store the address of an integer value. So j can, when you write star j, j can store address of an integer value. So now let us see a program here. Hash include stdio.h, void swap int star m int star n. So here is the program. Just let me just go to the program here. Okay, so here is the program. So first let us see the main function here. So main, the first two lines are the same. Int a is equal to 10, b is equal to 20. Then we will display the values of a and b before calling the swap function. So now we will call the swap function. So in call by value, we have called the swap function as swap a comma b, but here you see some changes. We have called it as swap ampersand a comma ampersand b. So when you write ampersand, we have already discussed now. Ampersand refers to address. So we are not passing the copy of a and b. Instead, we are passing the address of variables a and b. So next, after calling the swap function, once the control returns back to the swap function to the main, we will print the values after exchanging, that is the a and b values after exchanging. So now let us see what happens in the swap function. Void swap int star m star n. So earlier we have written int m comma n, now we have written star m star n. When you write like this, when you write star m, it means that m can hold the address. So our star m is nothing but the value that is stored by the variable that is pointed by m. So if m is pointing to So it's like star m is equal to now ampersand a. So what does that mean? M is holding the address of A. Similarly, int star n, it is equal to ampersand b. Second parameter will be copied to the second formal parameter. So int star n is equal to ampersand b. So the address of b gets stored in n. So what happens here is any changes that you make to the variable a and b, m and n will get affected. You will show its effect to a and b. So then we have int temp. Temp is equal to star m. So the star m means where m is pointing to. Now m is equal to ampersand a. So m is pointing to a. Its value, what is a's value? 10. So now temp is equal to star n. So temp becomes 10. Star m is equal to star n. So m star m is where m is pointing to. M is pointing to a. So a's value is now star n. Star n is nothing but n is pointing to b. So star n is address of b. The value of b is 20. So star m is equal to 20. So where is star m? It is nothing but a. A becomes 20. Similarly, star n is equal to temp. So temp is 20. Temp is 10. So star n means where n is pointing to. N is pointing to b. So b becomes 10 now. So I hope this is clear. Temp is equal to star m. M is pointing to a. So a's value will be copied to temp. Star m is equal to star n. So value pointed by m, that is a, will be now value pointed by n, that is nothing but b, so which is 20. So a becomes 20 now. Similarly, star n, value pointed by b, that is by n, that is nothing but b becomes temp, so that is nothing but 10. So a and b values will get exchanged here. So when you execute this program, the result will be values before exchanging are 10 and 20, values after exchanging are 20 and 10. So let us see the explanation in detail here. So void main, the point where the execution starts. So we have int a is equal to 10, b is equal to 20. So let us see the pictorial representation. A is 10, b is 20, and their addresses are 65521 and 65522. Okay. So now let us call the swap function. So when we call swap function, we are passing address of a and address of b. So the swap function is called. So address of A is nothing but 65521. Similarly, address of B is 65522. So these will be passed. Please note that these are dummy addresses that I am using. So we will pass these two values. So int star m comma int star y. So int star m will be now, m's value will be 65521, that because it is address of A, and n's value will be 65522, that is address of B. So now what happens here? So that means we are passing 65521 and 65522. So m is new variable whose address is now 65521. Similarly, n is another variable. So n is actually, the value of n is here 65522, but it is pointing to both A and B. So m becomes 10 now, n becomes 20. That means A and B both are same. So when you write int star 521, it means value at address 65521, that is 10. Similarly, it is int 65522 star 65522 means it is 20. So these values will get swapped now. So now let us see what happens. We have temp is equal to star m. Star m is nothing but m is pointing to A, its value, so it is 10. So 10 will be copied to temporary. Then star m is equal to star n. Star n is 20, so 20 will be copied to m. Next, star n is equal to temp. So temp is nothing but 10. 10 will get copied to star n. So when this happens, swap is called and performed. So after that what happens? The values will be printed as 10 and 20 and 10. So I hope this is clear, students. First, temp is equal to star m. Star m is where m is pointing to. M is pointing to A, its value. So temp will become 10. Similarly, star m is equal to star n. It means the value pointed by m, which is nothing but A, it is now value pointed by n, that is B. B is 20. So it will come to m. Then similarly, star n is temp. Temp is 10. So star n value pointed by n, that is nothing but B. B becomes 10 now. So that means when you change m and n, A and B values will get changed here. So the result will be A is equal to 20, B is equal to 10 after the swap operation. So next let us see how to pass arrays to. So to pass one-dimensional array to a function, it is sufficient to list the name of the array without any subscript, the size of the array as arguments. So if you have to pass any function, so you just need to pass an array to a function, you just need to write the name of the array. So you need not mention its size or mention its data type or any index. So there are 3 rules to pass an array to a function. The first one is that the function must be called by passing only the name of the array. So you need to pass only the name of the array. In function definition, the formal parameter must be an array type. Size of the array does not need to be specified. So when you call the function, that is in the function call, you need to mention only the name of the array. Whereas in case of the function definition, the parameter should be a array only, because only an array can receive an array. If it's simply an integer variable, it cannot accept an array. The third rule is that function prototype must show the argument in an array. So in the function prototype, you have to mention the name argument. So that is, these are the 3 rules to pass array to a function. So let us see an example here to pass array to a function. So let us go to the main program first here. So void main int I n comma 10. So this A is an array here, n is the size of the array, and we are using a loop here for which we have declared I. So I think to read the array elements we need to declare I. So for int, let us read the value of n. Printf, enter the value of n. Scanf %d ampersand n. Next, printf, enter the array elements. So let us read the array elements. To read the array elements, we know that we need to write a for loop. So for I is equal to 0, I less than and I plus plus, scanf %d ampersand a of I. So once it is done, once we have read the array elements, let us display the array elements. So printf array elements are, so what we do is, here we are going to pass an array. The array elements are not displayed from the main, whereas it is displayed from the function. So we need to pass array to the function as discussed. If you have to pass array to the function, we need to pass only the name of the array. The name of the array is A here, so we are passing A. So the first parameter is array, display A. Also along with that we are passing size, that is nothing but n. This is the normal way. How do we pass normally? The same way you will pass. But the first one, A, is an array, so we will just mention the name of the array. So display A comma n. So let's see what happens in the display function. So void display A of int A of 10. So here when we write, we need to define the data type, and we need to mention that it is an array. So int A of 10 comma int n. So just this is the only important thing we need to remember. So in the function definition, we need to mention it as an array. So to display, again we need to use the for loop. So we need to declare the loop variable I. So int I, for I is equal to 0, I less than n, I plus plus, printf %d slash d a of I. So what this function does is it displays the array elements one after the other. So this is how you can pass array to functions. So the output of the program will be like this. Enter value of n, let's enter 3. Enter the array elements, well let's enter it as 10, 20, 30. So the output would be the array elements are 10, 20 and 30. So next let us write a C program to find the largest of n given number using functions. So what we do is, in this program we are going to read an array of elements and we need to find the largest element in this array. So for this we will write a function called as big, to which we will pass the array and then we will determine the largest element. So first let me define the function big here. Big finds the largest element of the array, so it accepts an array here. Int big, int a of, see the size of the array is not a must, but the symbol, that is 2 square brackets, is a must. So int a of a indicate square brackets, which indicates that a is an array, comma int n, n is the size of the array here. So let's declare two variables, int I comma max. Max indicates the largest element at present. So int I comma I is the variable used for the for loop. Max is equal to a of 0. So initially let us take that the first element of the array itself is the smallest element. So here we have max is equal to a of 0. Then let us see which is the smallest element. For I is equal to 1, I less than n, I plus plus. If a of I is greater than max, then max is equal to a of I. So initially we will take the first element as the largest element. Later this element we will compare with the remaining elements of the array. So whenever we find, if at all we find that a particular array element is greater than the first element, which is considered as the largest element, then we will swap that element with the first element. So this process will continue and max gets updated each time. For example, if the array is say 10, 50 and 60. So initially 10 is considered as the largest element because it's the first element. So next 10 is compared with 60. So we find that 60 is greater. So we will make 60 as max. So 10 we will bring to 60's place. So the array becomes 60, 10 and then 60, 10 and 70. Let's consider it as 10, 60, 70. So next again, now 60 is in the max position, that is in the first position. Now we will compare 60 and 70. So we will come to know that 70 is greater now. So again now we will get 70 to the first position. So 70 and 60 will be exchanged. So 70 will come to the first position. So the ultimately first position or to the max, it's considered as the maximum element. So ultimately after the for loop, after the complete execution of the for loop, whichever variable has the whichever variable is the maximum, has the maximum value, that will be stored in max. So finally we will return the max value. So the definition of the function is like this: void main int I comma n comma a of 100 comma large. So I is for the variable, n indicates size of the array, a of 100 it is the array element, that is the array, and large indicates the largest element. So let's read the value of n here. For printf, enter the value of n, scanf %d ampersand n. So we are reading the size of the array here. So once we know the size, we can read the elements of the array. So we write printf enter %d elements, that is n elements. Then we write a for loop to read the elements of the array. So for I is equal to 0, I less than n, I plus plus, scanf %d ampersand a of I. So the array elements are read. So once we read the array elements, we will call the function big, which finds the maximum of the array elements. So large is equal to the value that is returned by the function, we will store it in large. So large is equal to big of a comma n. So a is the array, so we need to just write the name of the array, and n is the size of the array. So these many elements we are mentioning here. So large is equal to big of a comma n. So we are passing the array here. So finally we will print the largest element. So printf, the largest element is %d large. So this is how we can find the largest element of the array. So the output is like this here. Enter the value of n5. Enter 5 elements, 10, 4, 6, 2 and 20. So the largest element is 20. So what happens here is 10 is considered as largest initially, then 10 is compared with 4. So 4 is anyway small, so still 10 only is the largest. Next again 10 is compared with 6. Again we know that 10 is greater, so 10 will be still hold its position as max. Again 10 is compared with 2. Again 10 is largest, so 10 still will be the maximum element. Next time 10 is compared with 20, and we know that 20 is greater, so 20 will become the maximum element. So after that there are no elements to compare. So once the for loop finishes, we know that the max value is 20, so that is the answer that is returned by the big function. So the largest element is 20 will get printed. So students, that's all we have for this session. Thank you for watching.